Welcome, everybody. I'm Chris Daly, and we're here to have a conversation about the gig economy as part of our Agile short series. With me are my buddies, Jolly and Michael Joe. And so what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the gig economy and its impact on businesses. And the first thing we're going to talk about is new business models and how businesses could be impacted by new business models that might be introduced. Mike, do you want to kick us off here?
I know we're going to cover four topics, I think, on this, four subtopics on the gig economy and businesses. But this idea, it's interesting, a little chicken and egg, process on this thing with the new business models. And I know, Jolly, you've talked a lot about Uber and stuff in the past. It's interesting. I think that when I think about it, I relate to some of the things we were talking about this a little earlier. I've seen, I think COVID was one of the things that kind of injected the opportunity for people to look at new models, to look at different models. They were forced to look at different models in a lot of cases, both businesses and individuals. Some of the best food trucks we have around in our area right now for all the microbrews, when you go around at different places, were all started in 2020. You see, established 2020, right? So they went out during this time frame when things were kind of helter-skelter. And they decided to reinvest and reinvestigate and look at a new way to go into business for themselves as individuals. Now, I know from the business side, businesses have been, the more creative and I would say adaptable cultures that we were dealing with even pre-COVID. We're really looking at this and looking for ways to try to reach more talent, to try to be more talent centric and make working more enjoyable. If you've got families, you've got things you need to do, reducing commute times, and what can you do to move with the world and still be productive, given the fact that the world is constantly giving you new challenges every day and your market spaces and all the competitors in your market space. So some of it was, driven by business need and interest. Some of it was from innovation and creativity and thinking about new ways to do things. Some of it was just opportunity, both from businesses, I think, and from individuals. So I see it as kind of a chicken and egg, but I think there's contributors on both sides of that coin.
Yeah. And Mike brought up the Uber thing. And I remember Uber as one of the first gig economy companies out there, right? And that was pre-COVID even. And the new business model is what did it for them, where people used to rely on cab companies to move around a big city or even smaller cities. And the cab companies that operated using medallions that were handed down to the drivers, sometimes at humongous costs in big cities like New York, where people had to take out mortgages and loans to buy these medallions. These companies like Uber and Lyft came in and changed the business model so much that people like us, forced these companies and the local governments and the taxi companies to change their business model as well, because they had an inherent desire or advantage to maintain status quo, but that new business model cut through so much of society that local governments and federal governments were forced to change their practices. And it has been, in many ways, not all the time, but in many ways, a win-win for the consumer and the people who work, which we will now probably get to in the later topics today.
Yeah. How do you think it changes the workforce in terms of, what did it do to them?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, right? I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine maybe a year ago about how when let's step away from the example of Uber for a second and talk about how the IT industry works, right? We all used to go to work very often. I used to go to work at least 4 days a week. And most of the time we built really good friendships at work, right? I know Mike through a previous engagement. I met Mike and became friends with him because I met him there in Cleveland and worked closely with him, right? So that is a huge advantage. And the conversation with my friend was, how is that going to be now? What is your real incentive to be at that job or with that company when you are not making that deep relationships with the people around you? Is it going to be transactional? Is it going to be the Uber-like experience where you are going in and out very often, right? You jump into the workforce when you want to, which is a great flexibility to have, great work-life balance, and then you step out, and that culture or that cohesion that you built in a working in a company may not exist anymore, and that is kind of the downside of it. But from a work-life balance perspective, I have to say it's freaking amazing.
Yeah, it really does have pros and cons, right? And it's funny because some of the pros address cons of working in more of the traditional fashion, commute times, a lot of, if you think about it from a lean perspective, like wait time waste, or the inability to do certain things because of the different types of things you had to do to get certain places. But like you said, the richness of the interactions, the richness of the connection, which could impact innovation. It could impact expediency. It could impact quality. Some of those things are challenged in this in new dynamics and new ways. So I think it's interesting every time when you see the gig economy aspect kind of latch on or become a part of an industry, or even to start a new industry. It has its own challenges. I don't think it's like utopia everywhere. I know a lot of people I talked to, there were 4 companies I worked with, I think, over the COVID period, where I only met the people just a year ago or within 6 months for the first time face to face. And it was kind of neat. It's like they were different heights than what I thought, and they kind of looked different or carried themselves differently. It's interesting versus from being on a camera in a bedroom, right? Which was different. And I think that there's a lot of psychological challenges with this too, because a lot of people feel isolated. A lot of people feel very alone or kind of out on an island. If your personality type is very much a collaborator, or you work in groups and you enjoy that camaraderie, if you're not that lone wolf worker, kind of the maverick, it's a challenge for you to work in this way. However, gig economies are those are changing too. Gig economies are finding ways to get together locally, maybe not all going to one big building downtown, but finding ways to pods to meet and do things and get more interaction face to face. It's definitely the flexibility part is definitely a benefit, because it has the opportunity, given support from the environment, to really mold and become something really, really special for that group of people, and really contextually relevant for the work that they're doing.
Yeah, I think as you both were talking, I was thinking back about when was the first time I really recognized that there was a gig economy. And I think when thinking back on it, I think, the first time I recognized it was Amazon, right? I mean, Amazon did not publish books. All it did was sell books, right? So it connected the buyer with the person that had the book. And when I think about business models, right, and how it changes the workforce, it changes it. I mean, today, if I need a graphics artist, right, to do a piece for me, right, like I wanted to get our Agile Meridian logo converted, a version that would look well with Minecraft, with the stuff that I'm doing, right? I didn't go out to a traditional graphics firm to do that. I went out to Fiverr and found a guy who was doing it, that would do it for, he did it for $20. It would have taken me days to do it. He did it for $20 and I got it in 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it changes the workforce in that, if there's something you're interested in, you can now go after and pursue that. And you're not tied to, well, what was your education? What's your employer going to allow you to do, right? I mean, you think about things like Etsy, right? Etsy has got, you can buy books on Etsy, you can buy mugs, you can buy furniture, you can buy anything you want. It's all handcrafted, and it's typically small businesses, right? It's not the big, producers of stuff. And I think that is what I see is it's kind of changing the workforce, in that if you need somebody for a specific job, you can go get them at a reasonable price, and you don't have to contract with somebody and say, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to get a video made. You can get one made for $400 or $500, right? By some video guy, right? That you never meet, you never talk to, right?
The barrier to entry is so reduced. I was just talking to someone yesterday, a gentleman who's a coach actually up in Glasgow in Scotland. and we're both musicians. He saw the guitar in the back wall over here over my shoulder, and we got to talking about that and saying, wow, because he comes from the era and playing in the late 80s, early 90s when I played. And thinking about it, I said, I'm just amazed because right now the system behind me, I'm taking my old tapes and reel-to-reels and converting them down to digital. And I think about when I was young and doing this, how I had to get found by and go out and seek and then get audience with a record company or a record label to even have a shot at being noticed or published anywhere. Today, I can sit down and write the music in my home, not go to a studio, and then ship it out on the internet the minute I'm done. And it's amazing the flexibility and the reduction to the barrier of entry into different places. And I think when you think of when businesses look at this, one of the things they should be considering is that if it reduces my barrier to entry, then it probably reduces the barrier to entry for a competitor. And if I'm not prepared for that, it's likely that competitors come from places where I'm not used to them coming from or have never even thought of them coming from to be a competitor in my space, because those barriers have been reduced to very small or even no barrier at all in some cases.
Yeah, and this increased competition, which is what you guys are saying referring to, is actually pretty good for the consumer as well.
Absolutely.
Right? I think this might have come up in a previous Agile short, but there are hyper-local alternatives to Uber and Lyft, right? In a big city like Washington, D.C., there are companies that just operate using the same model, but they are hyper-local to Washington, D.C. And it has been really good for the customers there because the patterns are different. We are more than happy to walk one block to get a pickup along with a pool of people. There are so many alternatives that have come up, and it has been really good for the consumer as well. Sometimes it does drive into kind of a duopoly like Uber and Lyft, and that's probably not a good thing. But ultimately, I think increased competition is good for the consumer.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good point. What about flexibility? We've talked about it a little bit, but from a business standpoint, how does it help you with how does it provide greater flexibility?
I think it provides flexibility in many different ways. And to me, when I think about providing flexibility, that provides opportunity for innovation, an opportunity for efficiency gain and better flow and better value delivery. Anytime you can have a more flexible environment, you're less likely to be disrupted by VUCA or the world or anybody or a disruptor in your space that happens to pop up or become very powerful too. So that increased flexibility, I think, is probably one of the most valuable things about it, is because it gives you that adaptability. It's a component to adaptability that is going to benefit both the talent and any organization that they work for, whether it's their own organization or whether they work for as a gigger for somebody else in their business in a more traditional business model.
Yeah, that adaptability is key to combating VUCA, and that's part of the disruptive method, Mike. I mean, we all have worked on that for quite a few months now, and the adaptability and the flexibility that brings about the innovation from the workforce that already exists is going to be key for you if you want to get through this. Well, I would say turbulent times in many ways, right? I mean, we have been hearing about a recession for a while now. I don't know whether that is coming, whether it will be a soft landing. I'm not an economic expert.
Seeing a lot of more people request. Can you get my resume out there? So there's definitely a lot of pressures right now on that.
Yeah, and being adaptable at the workplace and in your personal life is going to be key to writing this out. Whatever form it takes. I don't know how bad it's going to be, but whatever form it takes.
Good. Well, we're at time here. It is about 17 minutes. We want to try and maybe achieve our first short at under 20 minutes. So we're going to go ahead.
Real short, agile short. Right, exactly.
Real short, agile short, right? Well, thank you guys for getting together with me this afternoon and talking about this. For those of you that are watching, check out our other agile shorts on YouTube. Be sure you like them. Next time, we're going to continue on talking about disruption and how you can help in ensuring that your future is not going to be disrupted. With that, we'll see everybody later. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Have a great day.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks, Mike.